And that has a little reflecting spot right here. And it's got a little at the tip, but it's starting to get sharp, and it might cut paper. Yeah, it's just starting to cut printer paper, even the spots where it's still having it. So, little spot sharpening on the tip, and a couple more passes. And the rough work on this stone will be done, and we can move to another more fine grit stone. Now this stone doesn't make a muddy slurry. It makes more of a sharp slurry. Instead of leaving a shot peened look where it's leaves a cloudy bevel, this will leave a streaky bevel, streaky shiny bevel, where you can see the direction of the scratch pattern, instead of the scratch pattern being muted by the cloudy or the shot peen look. And this is something that Cliff Stamp noted when he was studying a bunch of different stones that he got from Stu from Tools from Japan. He ordered, I don't know, 10 to 12 stones or something like that of different makes to test them out and see what was going on with them, and he found out a bunch of stuff. It's all on Cliff's forum if you want to look at it. Just search for Cliff Stamp sharpening stones in a web browser, and you'll find it. Okay, so we've got, this looks pretty good. Got one spot here, one spot there, and then the whole tip. So I got to do some more tip sharpening, which means I got to lift this up a little bit. Just focus on that. Focus on sharpening the tip some. And then sometimes it helps to take a flashlight and shine down, and you can if you get it at the right angle, you can see those spots that are there. It's looking like I've almost got everything gone. So I'm going to do a couple more passes on each side, like so, and then I'm going to switch to the Superstone 400, which does have a colloid type of mud or slurry that it leaves, which does leave a shot pattern. And why that shot pattern is so important is because it helps reduce burr formation and leaves the apex ready to leaves the edge bevel ready to be apex cleanly without any overgrind, which, if you've ever used a knife with a burr on it, it can appear sharp, or it can appear, and sometimes at some angles, and at some other angles it can appear dull. And so what we're trying to do is avoid over grinding, because not only does it waste steel, but it affects sharpness. You know, when you have, because a burr, this is a clean edge, a burr is like that, and so instead of being a sharp edge, you have, you know, a rounded, which is kind of like a dull edge, even though it'll appear to be sharp at some angles, because if you tilt it like this, it'll shave, it'll cut paper sometimes, but you do it on the other end and it acts like a dull edge. So We want to avoid forming a burr because it also affects forming a clean apex, which is pretty important because you want to have that as easy as possible, and that's why we're doing all these steps. I'm going to be using a lot of different stones here, and that's because I'm going to be taking this to a very high grit. Spyderco Ultra Fine is going to be the last stone after the Nanowa Fuji 8K. So this is going to be a pretty polished blade. And so since I've already got it mostly sharpened, what I'm going to do is just use the flats to bring up a kind of a slurry instead of using a stone to do it, so we can get the benefits, and that'll thin this out a little bit so we can get the benefits of the slurry and also thinning out the blade a little bit. Even though this is super thin already, never hurts to thin it out a little bit more, because this is going to be just a pocket knife. It's not going to be anything doing any prying or anything. I don't plan to do anything like that. It's just purely a just an EDC use knife, opening packages, stuff like that, doing maybe a little whittling. Now this is Superstone 400, the Nanowa Superstone 400, and now we got a little bit of a slurry here. Can raise the edge just a little bit. You see, I'm just right here, I just lift it up just a little bit, and that should be, you know, under 15 degrees per side. I'm not exactly sure what the angle is, and I don't care, to be honest. The angle actually isn't really, angle number really isn't that important. What is important is your angle accuracy, or consistency I should say, and forming a clean apex. All the stuff I'm doing right now here is shaping. It's all work behind the edge. I'm not actually shaping, cutting on the edge. If I was sharpening on the edge, then I'd form a burr, and that's what we're trying to not do with this method of sharpening. You can see I got a nice slick sieve slurry, and you can see this slurry is different. It's more mud-like than the other one, even though we didn't get a really good shot of the other one. But that's what we're looking for in these stones. And the super stones, I think, are the only splash and go stones I know that make this type of slurry, especially the 400. 400 is good to go. In fact, when Cliff first discovered this, he thought the 400 was the only one that did it, and it's kind of a, it's not a cheap stone, you know. It's a medium price stone comparatively. It's, you know, it's a good stone. But he found that the King 1K also did it. So he since the lowly King also does it, he wasn't that impressed with this stone anymore. I mean, he still liked it, still did what he wanted to do, but it wasn't like special like the only one that did it. He found that most resin-based stones would do it. Would form a colloidal mud slurry, colloidal mud slurry, and make the shot peen pattern. If you look under a microscope, you see it'll look shot peened. It'll just look cloudy. It won't be clear and shiny or streaky. It'll kind of look like how this looks. I don't know if I can get to see how you can see where the streaks are, and then you can see how this is cloudy. That's how it kind of is. It's the same way, cloudy, and the other stones leave streaked shiny. You know, that's the difference. So, got a little bit more sharpening to do on this stone, on this knife with this stone, because these are my coarse stones. After that, pretty much everything else is just going to be refining the scratch pattern slowly, and slowly sneaking up on the edge to where I can set the bevel with the final stone I'm going to use, which is going to be a hard stone, which is the Spyderco Ultra Fine. And I want to get the scratch pattern as closest to the Spyderco Ultra Fine as I can, so I don't have to do a lot of work. I can just do 1 to 3 passes and it'll set the edge bevel, and we'll be good to go. And if you notice right here, what I'm doing is I'm crossing the scratch pattern, and now what that does is that minimizes burr formation by cutting off any type of burr that might form. Because the thing with the 3-step and plateau sharpening is it really helps to have sharpened the blade before, so you can feel, or have stones that have good feel back, or both, so you can feel where the stone is at so you don't form a burr. It's no big deal if you do form a burr. The steps are the same. It's just you're not shooting to look to form a burr. Like I remember Cliff explained it to me once. Like it's like making toast. You know, you don't aim to burn the toast, but if you do, you just scrape it off, which is kind of like description of micro beveling, where you just micro bevel off the burr. You just scrape off the burnt stuff and you have your toast, you butter it. It's not perfect, it's not what you wanted, but you're trying to make toast. If you made it and it didn't,